But I was waiting to see if I could get into Australia, and Kieran, I heard from Kieran again, and he said there's a trial going on here that needs a theme song because somebody had trespassed onto a military base with a sledgehammer and looking for a helicopter gunship, and found one. I watched it on the TV. Machine guns fire towards the ground. I watched the people run. Helicopter gunship strafing the street. I watched them lining up the bodies in the Baghdad heat. They say these leaks had consequences. I must agree. When I saw them fire on the children, it affected me. I thought, what if I were wearing the other shoe? If I had a hammer, what would I do? I am just a person, like anyone. I am just another mother's son. I have no special powers. I cannot fly, not like that helicopter gunship up in the sky, sending all those bullets all around to the journalists and children on the ground. I am just one man, that's very true. But if I had a hammer, what would I do? Sometimes I try to wonder, why should I care? But then the answer seems so obvious. There are people down there. And right here in Queensland, there's an army base. And there's a helicopter gunship just sitting in place. There's a time for watching. There's a time to act. It's just gonna kill more children if it remains intact. I am just one person, but you are too. If you had a hammer, what would you do? If you had a hammer, what would you do? Well, I guess there's a lot of wonderful examples of direct action getting the goods around the world, but one of my very favorites was one that I heard about in Iceland, and it's known in Iceland as the beginning of the Icelandic environmental movement. It started on a specific date, August 20th, I think it was, in 1970. And I think it's especially interesting because not only did they win, but the like, you know, in the course of different struggles that many people in this very room have lived through, there's people that you know, get tired of tactics that don't seem to be working, you know, and then do, you know, sometimes engage in tactics that are, you know, really illegal, and and sometimes the outcome is not to step up the struggle, but to kind of stab it in the back and scare people off from being part of movements that engage in things like arson. And you know, or to people or movements that engage in things involving using the use of weaponry, or you know, even like extensive property destruction, which are all part of movements around the world. And sometimes these kinds of tactics move things forward and lead to revolutions, and other times they do just the opposite. In the case of Iceland in 1970, the movement began with the use of explosives, and then they won. But it was a different thing than similar tactics being employed in places like the United States, because everybody in the town joined in, and that's the difference, I think. And I think we could do that with the pipeline. Beside a volcano and the rising ash, a crystal river rushing past, a crystal river flowing free, now again like it used to be. Since now the dam is out of sight, blown apart by dynamite, blown apart by everyone in the land of the midnight sun. 100 farmers the next day called the cops so they could say, if you're looking for one to blame, 100 farmers gave their names, said it was I who couldn't just stand idly by. We all knew that sometimes you must commit a crime. There was a blast, a booming sound, and the band came crashing down. In Reykjavik, voices shrill said the dam should be bigger still. By the Laksa river's tide, 100 farms would be washed aside. Legal efforts and protests failed, but they still had air behind their sails. They had air and dynamite, so they gathered round late one night. There was a blast, a booming sound, and the dam came crashing down. Prosecutors tried to choose which farmers had lit the fuse, but not a one would tell the tale. Not one farmer went to jail. The dam was never built again, but many still remember when by the Laksa River they set things right with a couple sticks of dynamite. There was